Anxiety has become a way of life for many people, but how do you find peace when there's so many things to be worrying about? Well, that's where our next guest comes in. Joining us to talk about her approach to anxiety is Heidi Dennis. This segment is sponsored by Heidi. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for being here.
I'm glad to be here.
Let's start with the definition of anxiety, Heidi.
Yeah, so I think anxiety is so misunderstood because essentially all it is your nervous system responding to a perceived threat. Mm-hmm. That's it. So your body is trying to kind of gear up to protect you, keep you safe.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, I know that people maybe have a lot of misconceptions about anxiety. What are some of those? How can we bust some of those myths?
Yeah, so one common misconception that I've seen, every client that comes in with the presenting problem with anxiety wants one thing and one thing only: make it stop. They just want to make it stop, and it won't work because you're fighting against your internal alarm system.
Right.
And the second that really breaks my heart, especially as a therapist, is my body betraying me right now? Am I malfunctioning right now? Right? And so I just want to get that myth busted, because that's not true. Your body's doing exactly what it's designed to do.
Sure.
And there are other kind of quick fixes that you hear sometimes, like suppressing, distracting, or minimizing your stress. Do those actually work?
They don't, because imagine if your smoke alarm's going off and you try to ignore it, and you just try to stay in bed, right? That's not going to work. You would never do that. First, you have to go see, is there a threat? And then you can practice some of the other tools out there. Then maybe you can distract or whatever. But first you have to know, is there a threat?
Sure.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
And you know, we talked about this earlier when we were talking about having you on. Everybody has anxiety.
Yeah.
Everybody has worries.
Sure.
But it's learning to work with that anxiety that really helps you progress. Can you share more on that?
Yeah. So you have to learn how to listen to it as the teacher that it is. Right? And so even if there's not an actual threat, your anxiety can tell you some really important things. It can tell you need to slow down. It can tell you have too many things on your plate. It can tell you you're trying to control something that's outside of your control. All of those things, if you listen to it, can really be a great tool and a great teacher for you.
Yeah. We're talking about, working, with your anxiety versus working against it. What are some things that we can do to move forward and have kind of a more peaceful existence?
Yeah, I think the first response always needs to be, what is this trying to tell me? If you can do that first, then you can move into the number of tools available after that are, endless. But if you listen to it first, that's always the first step that you need
It's a great
to
tip.
make.
Yeah.
You wrote a book called Hello Anxiety.
I did.
What do you cover in the book?
So I cover kind of what we talked about today, what anxiety is, kind of normalizing it for people. And then each of the chapters, they're short and sweet because you don't need to feel overwhelmed when you're anxious.
Yeah.
They are practical to the point because you don't need to feel stupid when you're anxious. And you don't need to think I'm smart when you're anxious. That's not going to help you one bit. And so I try to just go through just real practical examples and analogies and tools and tips to help you respond to anxiety in a new way.
Sure.
Yeah,
Where can we find Hello Anxiety?
You can find it on Amazon, or you can find it on my website at HeidiDennisLPC.com.
Okay.
That's great.
I'm just going to grab this real quick. I just have all kinds of things happening.
Well, the chapters are short and sweet.
Okay,
so
good.
Great summer read. I know.
Sure.
Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you so much, Heidi.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you
for
so much.
sponsoring the segment as well.